wrote a book about this, and quite literally wrote a book about it called The Conscious Sale. And in it, I talk exactly about that reframing, and it is recontextualization of the problem. And I think what tends to happen is we believe our internal dialogue, and our internal dialogue then becomes manifest in their outward expression or an outward experience. So we look for it, we think it, and therefore we look for the reality to manifest. So how do you reframe that? If you think about a lot of the sales activity, and when I wrote that a couple of years ago, it was from the basis of being in sales and corporate sales, business to business, and looking at the way that salespeople actually conduct what they do. If we break it down even further from the generic, not generic, but the holistic approach of that's how I feel about sales, and look at the aspects of which make people feel icky, to use a really technical expression. Icky feeling comes from certain aspects, because you'll often find people love to talk to clients. They love exploring how they can solve problems. But when they drill down to it, it's actually certain facets of the process that they either find challenging or they have a resistance to. It's either because they have an underlying feeling of resentment towards that aspect when it's done to them. They don't want to be sold to by a slimy salesperson, which is a common response. They have imposter syndrome, quite correctly articulated. They have, there's a number of things. So cut to the chase, what can you do? You have to change the way you engage with everything. So what I start with is, you have to be clear on why you have a resistance. So where is the resistance coming from? So drill into your feelings. The question of why has to be your first question. Why do I feel the way I feel? Well, I don't like sales because, okay, and then what part of sales? And once you can get to a sponsoring position, sponsoring thought, I don't like asking for things. I don't think I'm worthy of things, whatever it is. And typically one thing is everything. So it could be self-worth issues external from work that are manifesting in your work environment or your business experience. If you can get to that understanding, it won't cure you, but it'll give you a position to start from in terms of, what do I need to restructure in my thoughts? Now, you can't stop thinking something by telling yourself to stop thinking it, but what you can do is enable another more positive and sponsoring output, another intention, which is where the intention part of the book comes from. So if you know that you have resistance in a particular area, you have to start feeding. It's like the old classic black wolf, white wolf, which one do you feed? Now you have to feed a different thought. So if you can be clear on what dimension or what aspect of the sales process you're unhappy about, you can start with the formulation of a new intention, and then feed that. On a practical level, it often, uncertainty and doubt and resistance comes from a lack of clarity on what needs to be done. So if you can be explicit in the task, the way that you're going to approach that task, and the expected outcomes from you doing so, you start to then close the gap between the position you're in and the desired outcome that you want to arrive at. It's always these 2 points, where you are, where you want to get to. And that actually is a fundamental essence of selling. When you sell an opportunity or value proposition to somebody, you're moving them from where they are to where they want to be. And the more you can close that gap, the easier the process becomes in terms of transitioning through those stages. So be clear on where it is you want to get to. Be clear on what it is you're resisting, and break down the steps that you think you need to do. And if you don't actually know, which you may not, because it may not be your principal part of what you do. Sales is a function of many businesses, but you may not consider yourself a salesperson. Then you have the opportunity to dive into that more specifically with professionals or forums like this, etc.